Second part. So in the first part, we saw how we can move a do clef up and down four lines because as human we are natural transposer. We can transpose music without even thinking about it. But instruments cannot transpose like the human brain. Transposing a melody on an instrument requires a long training that a singer does not need. This training requires a new vocabulary because we have to name each note differently than having 7 notes that we just move up and down a scale. So this gave us the 5-line staff and what's called the fixed do system. And in the US, the fixed do is what we will call the middle C. And the graph at the bottom left gives us an explanation on this. So we have on the very left with the blue arrow are do and fa clef that move up and down. But if we decide that arbitrarily we're going to call C the do when we have no other sharps and flats, we'll get to that later, then we also have the fa going on the F on the line, the 5 lines under, and then we have a so that goes on the G line on the staff above the middle C. This system is an evolution from the movable do. The fa clef was to answer the need of having the do on the ledger line above the staff, while the treble clef, which can be called the G clef or the sol clef, is to read notes when the do is on the ledger line under a staff. But we still have that movable do. It's still there. I put a keyboard on the bottom right to show the equivalency between our, to see on the keyboard where you will find your C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now, if we still have a movable do, how do we find it? Well, this circle of fifth is all you're going to need to identify where your movable do is on the modern notation. So the note on the outside of this circle is where your movable do will be. So if you have one sharp, you see on the top right there, then your do will be on your G note. If you have one flat, your do will be on the F. If you have 3 flats, then your do will be on the E line, which happens to be E flat because there is a flat in the key signature. Another component that is very different in chant and in modern notation is rhythm. And rhythm is a very important component of music. There is a fundamental difference between the rhythm of liturgical chant and the rhythm of most other music. The basic rhythmic unit for chant is the punctum. As we saw before there were lines, we chant words. The rhythmic measure was given by words, and the punctum's value is really a syllable of a word. The rhythmic signs in chant only increase the duration of a syllable or of a punctum. There is no sign in chant that will decrease or subdivide that basic unit that is the punctum. The basic rhythmic unit in modern notation, however, is not the punctum, but it is the measure. And the measure is an arbitrary duration linked to a mechanical movement. Measure, beat, 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 measure, beat, beat, beat. This is a 4/4 measure at the rhythm of 82, which is what the metronome, an instrument called the metronome, gives us. So the 4/4 is a mathematical formula, and it indicates the duration of beats and the corresponding signs. Learning how to count these beats is outside our scope here. Why? Because of time, of course, but also because we can see how this kind of mechanical treadmill-like rhythm is not conducive to audiation. There's not that pause that the singer can have to think of the next note. The rhythm is given externally by the beat. So for the purpose of this movable Do curriculum, we will limit ourselves to learning chant rhythmic signs. Hymns are about words too, so we will be able to adapt to hymns that chant rhythmic notation. We recommend, however, that you continue studying the rhythmic language of the 5-line staff and the beats and the measures, because that will open new doors, and many resources are available. If you just ask the music director at your parish, they will help you and direct you towards the right rhythmic information. So the only rhythmic signs we will need to start reading music on this curriculum are the chant signs. In liturgical chant, individual notes receive the same rhythmic values, irrespective of their shape, whether they're square, diamond, or round. However, notes can be expressed in different ways, which may affect their relative length. So if we add a dot, then we have 2 pulses. So instead of Do, it says Do. Same thing when we add an epizema, which is a little line. It becomes 2 pulses instead of just being 1. It also be extended in the context of a special noun, and 2 of those special nouns are listed here. A quilisma, where the 3 notes in succession, which will be, for instance, Do, Re, Mi, instead of being Do, Re, Mi, will be sung at the quilisma, under a quilisma as Do, Re, Mi. And the salicus, where the extension is on the second note. Do, Re, Mi. And the other signs you will encounter are the flat sign that we already encountered as an accidental. The natural is a sign that cancels the flat. And the custos is a sign that gives us the pitch for the next line. So we will begin our movable Do exercises by getting familiar with the most common intervals used in music with Do in 3 different positions. So we have here the Do, and I will play the scale going down with Do, Ti, and Do, Ti is what we call a half step. Ti, La, full step. La, Sol, full step. Sol, Fa, full step. Fa, Mi, half step. Mi, Re, full step. Re, Do, full step. Now, if we have that accidental, and if we have the Ti replaced by a Te, then we have full step. Do, Te, full step. Te, La, half step. La, Sol, full step. Sol, Fa, full step, etc., etc. And then that relationship between the Do, Ti, La, Sol, Fa, Mi, Re, Do, we're going to move up and down our 4 lines. Now the intervals, we're introducing bigger intervals than those notes that succeed each other. We're going to call the intervals the distance between 2 notes. For 2 notes that are next to each other, for instance, Do, Re, the interval is called a second. If one note is in between them, for instance, Do, Mi has Re in between, the interval is called a third. If there are 2 notes in between, for instance, Do, Fa have Re and Mi in between, it's called the fourth. And if we have 3 notes in between, it's called the fifth. For instance, Do, Sol has Re, Mi, Fa in between. Now, if a second or a third interval includes one of those half steps we just identified above, then it is called a minor second or a minor third. And if it does not include a half step, it's called a major second or a major third. Why am I telling you this? Because of all the notes for all these combinations of the notes on 4 lines, for liturgical music and for the purpose of reading music, this is the very important part. We only have to learn a few intervals, 7 exactly. 7 is 7 relationships, like 7 melodies is all you will have to learn. A minor second, major second, which also can be called minor second, can be called a half step, major second can be called a full step, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, and what's called a perfect eighth is an octave. I put that graph with the positions because see all these different positions, and the little green line is to show where the half step is, and the red line is also where the half step is. So there are 2 half steps typically on a staff, and you see them above the staff and under the staff. But the position of those half steps is going to determine the kind of interval we have, and we only have 7 intervals to learn. And with those 7 intervals, we can read all of the music of the Mass. It is a very, very important. This is why this training can allow you to read the music of the Mass in 3 weeks. Those 7 intervals, by the way, are included in the Happy Birthday song. So if you see at the bottom of the screen here, the Happy Birthday to you, Happy Birthday to you, Happy Birthday, dear John the Baptist, Happy Birthday to you, because today is June 24th and is the Nativity of John the Baptist. And why is it important? Well, because we have a very important link with John the Baptist. But first, this is pretty much the end of our presentation. Listen to the exercises for 3 weeks to build that library. Audiate those exercises, meaning that you're going to hear the sound, you're going to read it, but think about it in your head, and then only you're going to start singing it back and reading music. Let's talk about the Nativity of John the Baptist. There is a hymn that has been sung for centuries and centuries called Ut queant laxis, for the Vespers of the Nativity of St. John the Baptist on June 24th. See how that hymn was written in the 9th or 10th century. It was just words with some little signs on top. And then one line was added, that red line that you see, Ut queant laxis, those little signs that showed whether the music was up or down were, now measured by a line. And finally, in the 11th century, 4 lines were added. And this is an excerpt from a book called Mass and Vespers, which is kind of a reduced version of the Liber Usualis. And you see in that edition, they put the ut queant laxis, which is, and then the re zonare. This is where we have our ut, re, mi, fa, sol. The ut became later do, but this is how we got ut queant laxis, resonare fibris, mira gestorum, famulitorum, solve polluti, labireatum sancte Johannes. And that's how we got do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Thank you very much.